Filled with rage, Esau paced back and forth, trying to catch his breath. He and his brother Jacob had always been at odds with one another, but this was incomprehensible. How could Jacob steal his blessing, the one thing he had left? Sure, Esau knew Jacob was jealous of his strength and good looks, and of course Jacob could be manipulative. Jacob had always found ways to weasel out of helping out around the camp. He was quick with his words and would always find some excuse to stay home and have their mother Rebekah pamper him, while Esau did all the hard work, hunting and tending to all the physical chores by himself. Jacob had even manipulated Esau into giving up his birthright. But this, stealing Esau's blessing, this was beyond Jacob's usual manipulative antics. This was beyond sibling rivalry. Had he no respect, no morals? Esau writhed with exasperation, furious that he would be destined to serve his weak, lazy brother for the rest of his life. But he was even more enraged that Jacob dared to trick their father Isaac in his old age. How could Jacob mislead a blind man? How could Jacob rob Isaac of the opportunity to bless his most beloved son, Esau? And now the blessing had been spoken, and though Esau pleaded, Isaac made it clear there was no greater blessing left to give. Then Esau heard his father summon Jacob to his bedside. Perhaps Isaac had thought of some way to revoke the blessing or punish Jacob for this great injustice. Hopeful, Esau hid outside the door, waiting to hear his father reclaim what his brother had stolen. But, to his dismay, his father did no such thing. "Jacob," Isaac rasped, "I want you to go to Padan Aram and take a wife there from among the daughters of your mother's brother Laban. Whatever you do, you shall not take a wife from among the Canaanite women. Before you go, I would like to offer you my final blessing. May El Shaddai bless you, make you fertile and numerous. May he grant the blessing of Abraham to you and your offspring, that you may possess the land where you sojourn, which God assigned to Abraham." As Esau heard Isaac's caution that Jacob should not marry a Canaanite, everything began to make sense, and his anger turned to grief. Esau's parents had rejected him and refused him his blessing because they did not approve of his Hittite wives. His father had lied. There were more blessings to be given, just none for him. These blessings had not been stolen from Esau. They were consciously granted to Jacob out of fear of difference and an unwillingness to accept Esau's choice in wives. From the beginning, Rebekah had looked down on Esau's Hittite wives. Isaac did not trust them either. He questioned their values and suggested they were ignorant because they did not worship his God. Isaac and Rebekah could not see what Esau could see. Strong, smart, respectful women, wives who made his life happier, who supported him and appreciated him, wives who respected his differences and only asked the same in return. Heartbroken yet resolute, Esau took off to find Uncle Ishmael, the one person who would understand his pain. Ishmael would not reject him, for Ishmael too had foreign wives. Ishmael had been the firstborn, rejected and cut off by his father Abraham, forced to forge his own way in the wilderness. Was this Abraham and Sarah's legacy? To give in to the pressures of strained family dynamics? To turn a father away from his own son? To reject, mistrust, and cast out family as if they were strangers? If so, Jacob could keep his blessing. Esau wanted no part in that legacy. This is not the story we traditionally tell in Parshat Toldot. The narrative establishes how Rebekah and Jacob cleverly secure Isaac's blessing, ensuring that Abraham's legacy and God's favor will be bestowed on their proper heir. Rabbinic commentary throughout the ages has vilified Esau as a wicked brute, the symbolic embodiment of all evil in the world. When we read the story, we're expected to be proud that we come from the line of Jacob, not Esau, that we are Yisrael, not Edom. But perhaps we lose something when we ignore Esau's voice. There are many political reasons why Esau has been portrayed so negatively throughout Jewish history. The biblical authors and later commentators look to the narrative to denigrate their enemies and establish Israelite superiority. Another political motivation for the story is to emphasize the importance of endogamy, marrying within one's particular ethnic group, and the pitfalls of exogamy, marrying outside of one's ethnic group. Sure, Esau was raised in the same household with the same values as his brother Jacob, but because of his exogamy, Esau is not one of us. He did not inherit our covenant because, as Genesis 26, verse 35 explains, his marriage to foreign women was morat ruach liyitzhak u'lerivka. It embittered his parents' souls. We find additional textual evidence for Isaac and Rebekah's distress over Esau's Hittite wives in Genesis 27, verse 46, when Rebekah tells Isaac she is concerned that Jacob will make the same mistake Esau made and marry from among the native women. In this verse, she proclaims, "Katzti bechayai mibnei bnot chet. Im lokeach Yaakov isha mibnot chet ke'ele mibnot haaretz, lama li chayim." I am fed up with my life because of these Hittite women. If Jacob takes a Hittite wife like those women who are in this land, my life will be worthless to me. Isaac responds to Rebekah's plea by giving Jacob a second blessing and forbidding Jacob to marry a Canaanite woman. This is the blessing that Esau overhears, which cements his understanding that his family has rejected him because of his wives. When I read this text, I cannot help but wonder what would have happened if Esau had not been rejected by his family. In the traditional narrative, Esau dies with no accolades, leaving behind a brood of descendants who will become kings of pagan lands. His grandson, Amalek, the most infamous among them. But what if Esau had been accepted by his family? What could his ancestral heritage have offered him? Later chapters of Genesis illustrate the ways revelation and personal wrestling with God bring Jacob wisdom, righteousness, courage, and integrity. Yet Esau is denied these spiritual gifts and the ethical commitments they promised to instill. If Esau had not been so readily rejected by his descendants, if Esau had not been so readily rejected, perhaps his descendants may have been just as righteous as Jacob's. And are we to believe that Esau was truly wicked and incompetent, that he had nothing to offer his family? As much as Esau is vilified, he must have had some attributes that were valuable. After all, if Esau had no merit, Jacob could have skipped the ruse and just asked for Isaac's blessing. Instead, Jacob dresses up and pretends to be Esau. What characteristics does Jacob emulate? There was the value of Esau's skills in hunting, cooking, and providing for his family, but Jacob also emulated Esau's loyalty and compassion towards his father, and Esau's desire to honor and serve his parents in their old age. Regardless of Esau's perceived mistakes, these are valuable attributes he was cut off from providing to his family and his people. What about Esau's Hittite wives, Yehudit and Basemat? What would they have contributed if they had not been rejected? Unlike Esau's parents, Yehudit and Basemat were open-minded. They were able to form intimate bonds across lines of difference. They were able to see the best in the other. Not to mention, we all know Yehudit and Basemat would have been the ones waking up at dawn every Sunday to saddle the donkeys and drag Esau's protesting children to Hebrew school. It's not a far jump from the key tropes in Esau's story to the contemporary discourse around intermarriage. The world that produces the stories of Genesis would have understood Esau's transgression as exogamy, because he marries across ethnic boundaries. The terms exogamy and endogamy don't really apply to today's Judaism. Today, we have expanded our self-understanding from an ethnic group to the more complex notion of a peoplehood and a spiritual heritage. Nonetheless, even though we no longer see ourselves exclusively as an ethnic group, we still wrestle with how to navigate the treatment of those who wish to marry out. In today's world, intermarriage is more prevalent than it has been throughout most of Jewish history. In a 2013 study, the Pew Research Center reported that 44% of all married Jews in the United States are married to someone who is not Jewish. Within the Reform movement, 50% of our congregants have spouses who are not Jewish. Moreover, the study found that 83% of children who are the products of intermarriage grew up to marry someone who was not Jewish. These statistics show that for our community, intermarriage has become a significant and ever-growing reality. When we look at intermarriage today, I believe we should be asking the same questions of our own practice that I ask of Esau. Obviously, there are places where the parallels between this story and our modern reality disintegrate. We do not reject those members of our Reformed Jewish family who are intermarried. For decades, Reformed congregations have been committed to the work of outreach. Our Reform institutions strive to be audaciously hospitable. We welcome children of interfaith marriage into our religious schools, and we work hard to make sure that spouses who do not identify as Jewish still feel welcome in almost every element of congregational life. Despite the many strides our movement has made regarding inclusion of intermarried families, many Jewish leaders are still asking the wrong questions around intermarriage. Our movement leaves it to the discretion of every rabbi individually whether they will officiate at intermarriages. As a result, many Reform rabbis welcome intermarried families, but refuse to perform intermarriages. When we choose to welcome intermarried families, but refuse to officiate intermarriages, we are not asking what our community has to offer these couples, or what these couples have to contribute to us. We are asking how we can tolerate an unavoidable reality despite the fact that we find it undesirable. We are telling Esau that he may live off our land, but he has embittered us with his deviant choice of wives, and he is no longer worthy of our blessing. When I discussed the matter of intermarriage with my HUC classmates, many of my peers expressed discomfort with intermarriage. Some ask, if we encourage intermarriage, won't Judaism become more and more watered down until we eventually die out? Others ask, if we condone and embrace interfaith marriage as a movement, won't we alienate ourselves even further from our conservative and orthodox co-religionists? I respect my peers, and I understand their reservations about intermarriage, but I think they are asking the wrong questions. When we refuse to sanctify intermarriages, we do not prevent Judaism from being watered down and becoming irrelevant. We water it down ourselves by refusing to embrace the full richness of our tradition. If we choose not to officiate intermarriages, we turn away from an opportunity to celebrate how much Judaism has to offer. And while I absolutely agree that it is important to maintain our bonds with the rest of Klal Yisrael, I do not believe we should allow their perceptions to hold us back from embracing all that our Judaism has to give and all that these couples can contribute. So what does Judaism have to offer intermarried individuals? Judaism offers a part in a communal covenant. We are committed to a collective relationship with God. Our shared communal covenant means that we not only have people to mourn with us in times of grief and to celebrate with us in times of joy, but it also means we take responsibility for each other. We are a community that challenges one another. We, like many communities of faith, ground our action in a strong commitment to justice, ethical ideals, and a desire to repair the world. But we uniquely recognize that we cannot actualize these shared values as a community unless we work to grow and better ourselves individually. So we push one another to think critically and live our best lives. This covenant is an obligation we have to all who identify as Jewish, regardless of who they choose to marry. But it is also a profoundly meaningful gift we can give to all those who choose to marry Jews, even if they choose not to become Jewish. What do those spouses who do not identify as Jewish have to offer us? They offer us diversity. Encountering diversity as a community forces us to do the work of articulating why we believe what we believe and why we behave how we behave. It may even encourage those of us who do not know why certain practices are part of our Judaism to find those answers and engage in Jewish learning. In addition to diversity, these partners offer us a witness and a mirror to our beliefs and practices. In these roles, they can hold us accountable for completing the sacred work we have taken upon ourselves. These spouses can bring a way of valuing the tradition and respecting the ideals Judaism has instilled in their partner, even if they do not want to take on those values as their own. Whether they drive children to religious school, volunteer around the congregation, or even just attend as a witness for a life cycle event or a service, they have something to contribute that should not be overlooked. Rather, they have something to contribute that deserves our blessing. A blessing is both an invocation of God into that which we bless and a recognition of the holiness that exists within that thing. When Esau was denied his blessing, he was denied closeness to God. He was denied the opportunity to understand his life as something sacred. As rabbis, we have the opportunity to stand under the chuppah with a couple and sanctify their marriage with the words, Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, shehakol bara likvodo. Praised are you, Adonai our God, ruler of the universe, for everything is created in your glory. In this blessing, we affirm that their relationship is something holy, created by God and filled with the presence of divine glory. I firmly believe in these words, Shehakol bara likvodo. All things are created in God's glory. There is no less holiness in the relationships of those who intermarry. Our rabbinic role should be to magnify and celebrate the fullness of God's glory as it manifests in all sacred bonds. We are not a great movement despite our high rates of intermarriage. We are vibrant because we have embraced our tradition's capacity to learn from a multitude of voices. We are not afraid to read our sacred texts as discursive and multivalent, to learn from the voices of those characters who have historically been rejected and ignored. As rabbis, as clergy, we owe our communities the same open-mindedness in our role as officiant as we offer in our role as Torah scholar. I pray that we all may be able to celebrate the richness of Judaism, all that it has to offer, and all those who wish to marry Jews have to contribute, and that we may all see the divine presence in every relationship. Shabbat Shalom.